Looking
All
good.
right, cool.
All right, Frank Romo.
All right,
I
I'm done.
won't do it
I
with your
like the
fists in the air.
I like the
There you
elbow
go.
trick. The elbow trick is like a dance now. All right. We're ready.
Frank Romo, CEO of RomoGIS. Welcome back on the show.
What? It's so great to be back. I'm so happy. We were already joking, cracking up. This is great. I'm so thankful to be back.
We've been through a few geographies since the last time, which was London for me when I was packing up the apartment. Then we met in person at Priscilla Cole's Geospatial Risk Summit in Manhattan, which was just amazing.
I know we hit it off at the Geospatial Risk Summit, and we talked a lot, and it was great. So many ideas flowing, and just great banter. It's fun. It's good to see you again.
I wanted to take the opportunity to understand from you, Frank, how you're using AI as you work with several communities across the US. How has it been used for them to discover power, use power, where they didn't previously have it?
Thanks. I mean, that's a great question. I think a lot of folks right now have this one or two response. Oh, I'm not going to touch AI. It's really bad. Or yeah, we should go into it, but be kind of wary. We go out and we tell the students, hey, this is another tool that you need to be using. You need to be invested in it. You need to be learning it. You need to be learning the different flavors of it. And it is for me an exposure tool, right, where it helps students just navigate to a new path. We used it in the Bronx for urban planning and urban design renderings. We've used it to gather data for geospatial projects, and we've used it for creating a quiz so students in Detroit could take the Part 107 drone pilot license. So we use it as a study aid. So in all of those instances, it's being heavily used to supplement what's already going on, while simultaneously making sure that the students are critical of what's coming out of the AI. Because with us, we always talk about power. We talk about data being power. We talk about data access being power. And you can't always, and we also talk about the criticality piece that is needed when you're examining data. And we can't just take it at face value. So in there, it's great study, great opportunity to grow, but it's also another opportunity to reinforce that, hey, we can't take this at face value. We need to interrogate it. We need to figure out what's going on with it so that we know if it's trustworthy or not. And if it is, that's great. If it's not, what other data, resources, experience, community knowledge can we input to make it better?
You're an example for us all of how a community organization is keeping up with modern tooling and making sure that it's a part of the approach you take. So yeah, I'm all ears for some examples of how you put this to use in a community.
All right, excellent. So again, RomoGIS, we never do this alone. This is the Bronx, New York. We never do this alone. We do this along with partners. Angela Yambo Foundation is a community organization vested in the Bronx. The YMCA in the Bronx has also been a partner in developing these tools and these ecosystems for students because they recognize, again, they're educators at both of these organizations. They're community leaders at both these organizations, and they recognize the value of students to have technical knowledge and technical skills. We at RomoGIS, we focus on our main motto, people, processes, and technology, recognizing that always starts with the people. So where does that fit in when we talk about AI, right? Where does the human fit into that? And I think that's where we try to leverage and support our community members, our students, to say, hey, you have knowledge. Why don't you work with the AI to build that knowledge that is community-based, that is centered around that experience and that expertise to make the model work for you, to make the AI work for you, because that is the way that we can teach folks how to harness that power, with it still starting at the person or the people level. The Angela Yambo Foundation, they're a great organization. They do work all across the board on unemployment, educational resources, opportunities, community engagement. Here in this one pager are a few images of events that we had together. So at the top, that was that was them on a march. On the right was one of our students' hand-drawn maps, and on the bottom left is another program we worked with them called Love Theory, where we supported them in their community and educational development. So they are vested. They have a lot of investment in the community, a lot of support from educators and community organizations. And that's where we come in and we say, all right, we want to provide access to technology. We want to provide access to data, entrepreneurship. And this is a quote that we often say. I say this, I've said this for years. Power limits access to data because data is powerful. Might have even said this last time I was here, because this is
that was on the last one, yeah.
because that's so important for folks to understand that these tools are not like neutral as we might think, that there's important decisions being made of how to build foundational models, of how to build AI tools, of how to draw a line on a map. Well, what happened last time we drew a line on a map in the 40s, 50s, 60s? We ended up with redlining. So with those seemingly small adjustments to the data, to the technology, it can have profound impacts on people's lives. And so we understand that there is often a power imbalance when it comes to data, technology. Folks like to talk about the digital divide. That's one thing, but that's not just, we can't just stop at saying, oh, well, we gave somebody access to internet and now everything's good. No, we need to be able to teach computer skills, digital literacy, and in the best way, teaching how to use data technology for entrepreneurship and to create meaningful change in your community. So again, on the right here was part of our GIS for Good program, is us working with the Bronx and the community leaders there to support community mapping, back to school events, a variety of events, which led us to us working with students to do their community mapping exercise. We did a walking tour with our Bronx historian, and we walked around with students to identify where there needed to be more lighting, where there were potential areas for safety concerns, whether that was due to gun violence or other activities. And students were able to provide us with real life experiences and details and maps and data about what was going on in the community. So that data gets stored, and we move on to more research and data, and we're going to bring back those students' expertise as we make our maps and as we incorporate the AI as well. So this project was really situated within this violence reduction mission that Angela Yambo, RomoGIS share to support community safety. So that's just a little bit about the Bronx there. You see in one image the gun violence map from 2014 to 2023. And below that, you see an old redlining map. Again, this is just to showcase where data has come from, where it is now, how is data collected, all of these things. Each step in the process is opportunity, we know, for bias to be introduced, for errors to be introduced, for a community to potentially get the rotten end of the stick because of how the data was spliced or however it may be. And
could I just ask, sorry,
ahead.
Frank, could I ask you to step back to the previous slide?
Yes, sir.
Because we've got a global audience on the podcast. I think plenty of people will have heard of the concept of redlining, but they might not fully understand what it is. Could you give us a bit of extra detail what that bottom map means?
Absolutely. So redlining was a common practice from the United States government through the Housing Authority and other authorities that were part of a mapping effort to identify areas in cities all across the U.S. of where investment was safe and where investment was not suggested. The red here, you can see, got a value or a grade of a D, indicating that that area was deemed by the government to not be fit or sustainable for investment, which led to things like institutions such as banks, grocery stores, other resources that make a healthy community, not allowing some of those folks or disincentivizing those folks from investing in those neighborhoods. So then without that investment, without those tax dollars, without that community cohesion, a lot of those neighborhoods in the Bronx, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in Detroit, in places where this happened all over the United States, those neighborhoods were disinvested in for decades, which has led to, in some places, now those places getting reinvested in and being gentrified, and in other places, those areas still not being able to bounce back because of the lack of investment. It's often used as a very a good map showcasing where the financial investment was set to go. And as we follow the trajectory throughout the years, we can see the impact on those communities.
Right, and the locations that you mentioned just before, Chicago, Detroit, the Bronx, it almost sounds like RomoGIS is targeting locations across the US that were historically problematic from a redlining standpoint. Is that basically the strategy you have?
I wouldn't say so, but I think we go to where the need is, and I think you'll find where we work a lot of places there are communities that have been impacted by things like gun violence, have been impacted things like school closures, lack of access to transportation. And you can look across the U.S. in urban settings across the U.S., whether it's one neighborhood, a couple of neighborhoods, or an entire city where this has happened, this disinvestment and this cycle or metabolism of the urban planning process has taken place and has displaced people and limited the opportunities for financial improvement or educational improvement, which is why we focus on making sure that we can have educational development opportunities, personal development opportunities, and professional development opportunities for the communities that we work with.
Okay, and I've got one more question before I release you again to keep going through the slides. So I'm asking you this question just to flag an issue, and then I'll follow up later on. So as a part of your interventions here or your engagement with these communities, are you gathering data?
Yes, that is part of what we do is, and sometimes that data is, for instance, maybe at the end, or if you want me to jump in now, I could jump into an application where, you know, this might be an okay time to jump in. This is an application right here in the background that we created for our partner in the Bronx on gun violence incidents from 2014 to 2023. What we recently built is this, which goes through all the way through 2024, looking at so you can see there's a similarity in terms of what the original map looked like. And I told you this earlier, this is the first time we've shown this map ever. Last time you saw the first time world premiere of our map as well. So again, I appreciate you bringing me on.
I like that breaking news and community organizing in geospatial. This is exactly what I want this podcast to be about.
So I know I appreciate that because, you know, we are working in the community every day and we want to still share this information. So working with a partner like you really does help us get out the broader information about what we're trying to do, because it doesn't just stop, right? It doesn't just stop at our presentation, our community programs in the schools or at the YMCA. We are also building data that looks at information before geocodings there that need to be updated. But you can see, we can look here for this year, we can select by year, we can do all of those things and really start to look at the data. And when we talk about how does that actually help communities, now they have that data in hand so that they can go advocate for themselves, so they can go utilize it to support change in the community. For instance, I'll get to it right here, but this is going to lead to a presentation from our young folks. And the young students who participated in our program, they presented in front of about 30, 40 people, including the Bronx District Attorney in attendance, and the Business Improvement District in attendance, and folks in the community who have stake in the community. They were in attendance, and our students were able to articulate to them what their vision would be based upon the maps that they put together and the AI images that they put together.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for entertaining those interjections, Frank. And I'll keep you and the listeners in suspense for what my follow-up question will be at the end. But yeah, I'll carry on with from where I interrupted you.
Not a problem, man. So we had our students do some research. They pulled up some data and statistics about the Bronx and the neighborhoods in the Bronx. One of the things they noticed was that there was a large youth disconnected rate, which means students aren't in school or in a job. And there's also a large number, 27%, 18%, or 28% right here, 25% right here, under the population under 18 years old. So when we see this, we see youth disconnected, we see a large youth population. Our students that were engaging are reflective of the community. And what we want to do is help them bring their ideas to light and their vision to light, because they know what the solutions are, what the answers would be for solving issues in the community. So we asked students, what do they feel a healthy space looks like? So in order to find a new space, create a new space. We wanted to understand what they felt a healthy space looked like. This is a common thing that we've done with students in California and other places, because again, we've worked with students who have been impacted by gun violence or other things in the neighborhood. And so we're trying to understand what it means for them to have a healthy space. What does it mean for them when they feel comfortable hanging out and they feel safe? And they mentioned a few places here. These are just some survey results. Where do they find out about resources? If they're disconnected, how do they get access to resources? What are the main things that limit them from participating? A lot of times, if we look at this survey on the right, they said, okay, lack of awareness is one thing, but if lack of safety is up there and transportation challenges are up there and parent permission is up there, if I'm a parent and I know it might not be safe, I don't want my student to travel alone. And again, I'm not saying that it's like that in this community all the time or anything like that. What I'm saying is that these are common issues that community members face from a very urban planning perspective, from a very community development perspective. And how do we address that using the tools that we have, like mapping and AI? And so we asked them, what would it look like to see a public, healthy, and supportive space? And then we are going to migrate into the actual creation of what that looks like for our students. Here, you see my man Adrian up there presenting. On the right-hand side, you see a map that we had worked on. In the middle, you see his rendering for one of the community spaces that we were looking at.
And was that rendering made using AI?
Correct. All the renderings in this that the students made were made using AI, and I'll jump to that shortly. One of the things that we first did was we did our walking tour of the neighborhood, and we also had students identify which areas needed more lighting, which areas were maybe a little unsafe. And so on here, they're transmitting some of that information to the map.
So those are examples of the kind of data, spatial data that's generated through these engagement events.
Great point. Yes, you're right. There you go. Correct. So they're creating data about their community, identifying where there needs to be more lighting, what are the safe routes walking to school, what are the areas that they should avoid, these kind of things. And again, that community knowledge, if it's fed into an AI, if it's utilized in conjunction with an AI.
That's the reason why I'm asking this question.
We can utilize that to help better support the outcomes, better support the planning. This to me is a very like planning, design oriented thing. But here you see AI being able to be used in conjunction with geospatial, AI being able to be used in conjunction with student and community experience.
It's really valuable in terms of the validity of foundation models, the kind of data that you collect in this work.
Absolutely. And like you said, when those voices and perspectives aren't implemented and folks try to utilize these tools, they will be misled or ill-informed in how to actually address that community. And here's where you could get hyper specific, right? Here's the data, the experience, the information's from 18 to, folks under 18 in this specific community, and the things that they are experiencing, and bringing in other things like census data, like all this other, where are the community resources, all those things could be, when more specifically planned for, when integrated with more of the, ground truthing, kind of the reality, that it can make a really big impact for these communities. Here are two of the places that our students were in the neighborhood that students felt were underutilized, or maybe one of them had, the one on the left right here, had recently been fenced off and no longer has access. But these are two areas that students felt could be redesigned and utilize AI and the data that they gathered, and the areas that they said where the safe walking routes were, or areas that needed more lighting. Here are two places in the Bronx that we wrestled with. So here's an example of what it actually looks like on the ground. And again, we took this on our walking tour, right? We see the before picture on the left, exactly what it looks like currently. And on the right, our students used AI to develop images of what it could look like based upon certain, not even a prompt. I just asked them, based upon, the maps that you made, based upon what we talked about in our sessions. We had a 5-week course. And so based upon those things, what is it that you want to see? And so for this one, the student talked about green space. The Bronx has a high asthma rate. there's heavy pollution in that area due to some of the big rigs that are coming through there right off the water as well. Like there's just a concentration there, and without enough green space, our students already knew that that was going to make a difference. But in talking to the AI, they said, well, can we design something that has more green space so that we can make an impact on the air quality? And again, that's a great example of a very specific project. Here we go again. Here's another example of what it would look like. So those are just kind of introductory, high level. Now we jump into the students actively planning and presenting their work. Here's Adrian talking about building a public space to help community. And so he wanted to create a space where you could sell food and drinks and have a bench and be able to showcase an area that was clean. And maybe he said there's some folks playing chess right here. That's something that just is very simple that I can walk through. Another student right here talked about creating a youth center where on the first floor you could have a community center with food and drinks and activities, and on the second floor you can have an educational space where they can do homework and activities and lounges. And so again, this is a great example of what it could look like. So the next question becomes, well, how do we get this accomplished? And we can also use the community connections, other AI, other things to put together to say, okay, well, here are the folks we need to bring to the table. Here's what it would cost to build this. How do we fund this? Who owns this? All of those questions can be answered with that combination of research, the foundational models of AI, and the community expertise. Here's another student. This was
that's a really nice.
Go ahead.
I love that. You get a bit more of a view. It does look like a beautiful, inviting green space.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, Beyonce did a great job. And here she was the one who focused on creating a greener Bronx because she understands the air quality issue. So that was something that she designed. As we move forward, here's another one talking about a kid-friendly space where there's a child-friendly zones where kids can have for themselves and play. And this, again, young lady talked about how she, there are young kids that she sees that don't necessarily have a place to go. And so this is a good example of a designated kid-friendly zone, which I thought was really awesome. Here we're moving to another public space, Roberto Clemente Plaza. Again, this was a picture that was taken on our walk. Here's just a quick rendering showcasing, some pop-up shops. So here, Derek was talking about support for homeless services or sanitation supplies for the community in the neighborhood. And so on the right, you see his rendering, which you see a little booth for homeless services and sanitation, as well as another spot in the middle and some places to hang out or sit. Here, I love this one. This one includes the transit, all of it. On the right hand side, you see there's the bus spot right there. There's a place where you can have a stage and people performing along with a more seating area. But this was a really cool one because on that corner, right over here, there is a bus stop, and it does get a little crowded, and it does get hard for people to stand because there's a little bit it's too tight over there. So here the student was aware of that impact on the urban environment that you wouldn't see otherwise, right? A regular planner who's doing transportation planning is like, oh yeah, that bus route works. Oh, it gets choked up a little bit, but that's probably because of traffic. When in reality, there's not enough space for people to stand. A community member recognized that and is trying to integrate that into the AI with what they're talking about. And finally, I think is the last one. Mia was focusing on creating a green space, but also attraction space that has some kind of focal point. One of the things she mentioned was, well, they do the little pop-up shops in Manhattan, or when they put the Christmas tree up, or when they put little statues up. Like it can be a seasonal place that can be activated and be able to have different events and things like that. And again, in each of these, you see, the hope for the creation of place. And I think with that, the students' expertise really came in to say, we know what it looks like. We know what it needs. Here are some ideas that we can feed to the AI. So here are some of the challenges that were identified. Certain businesses don't allow teens to enter. That is a kind of a newer thing that is happening in New York and some other places. We talked about some of the poor areas. These are just some of the things that were brought up as some of the challenges. And then through our engagement, through the project, through our partner, the Angeliambo Foundation, through the students' expertise in their presentations, they said these were the things that came up. We wanted to use the civic engagement as a tool for social mobility and leadership. So these students got paid to participate in the program. Thanks to the Angeliambo Foundation, they got paid to participate in the program. And we, through that, have built partnerships with the Business Improvement District, with the YMCA. This is how we're utilizing the technology to facilitate the conversations and the collaboration between all of the key leaders and the stakeholders. And then finally, you know me, I always want to talk about what it means to actually the outcomes. Students learned on the technical side of things, some hard skills about GIS, AI, urban planning, and on the soft skills side of things, like I said, they ended up giving a presentation to about 30 to 40 people with some high-level partners in attendance, and they did a phenomenal job. The press was there. They interviewed a few of the students. It was really great. So again, here we see what I like that we're talking about AI foundational model, and I think for me, I would like to say like RomoGIS's foundational model is something like this, where we are focused on personal development, community development, professional development, and using whatever technology tools, sometimes AI, sometimes geospatial, sometimes those in collaboration. But our foundational model is really focused on empowering the community through the technology and through the community organizing model that we have to make that impact. And here again, the program won an award from the Aaron Judge Foundation, and we are going to do another set of 25 students to support the cohort for turning data into action as part of our GIS for Good movement.
This is such a perfect contrast to what redlining is. This is investment in to use a foundation model, an AI type term, in a fully multimodal way, even having the press there. I love it. There has to be a foundation model specifically spun up to serve activities of the kind of organization of RomoGIS to benefit vulnerable groups.
Technology has never, even as now with phones being ubiquitous, et cetera, but technology has never been evenly distributed, right? I mean, we know that there's access because of funding, there's access because of materials, there's access because of all kinds of things. And so for me, you look at something like redlining in a geospatial kind of way, right? It's a map. We're going to redline this area so that there's not an investment, et cetera. That's like a very like we'll go from like a very analog putting a red line on a map to a very digital to a very impact oriented, like here's actually what happened in the community because of that analog drawing that got digitized and then we went into experience. And I think that same thing is happening right now with AI, right? Their initial out the gate, we have great models, and the more you interrogate them and understand, you see how biased they are. But nonetheless, because AI is pushing the forefront, those things are being carried over. And at some point that impact and the other shoe is going to drop. And so for me, it really is trying to understand how, even though that's happening, how can the communities I'm working with simultaneously grow with the AI, be at the table to interrogate the AI, be able to be in those jobs to have those conversations. And to me, again, it always starts with education. Our motto is educate, organize, mobilize. And it always starts with education for me, because that is where folks can decide how they want to make that impact. They can decide, hey, I'm going to go be a lawyer to try to fight these cases against illegal use of AI. I mean, it's very simplistic, but that could be something that somebody wants to do if they understand how it's being used against their communities or impacting people negatively. That could be a job, an outcome that somebody might actually want to pursue because they've been educated on that. Without that education, there's no room for that job or that opportunity to showcase itself.
Yeah, there's nothing like being a participant in mainstream society and having your voice and just being a part of what becomes the future. I also wanted to say that in making observations about limitations of existing foundation models and what flows on from that. I shouldn't overplay this, because what you've just been talking about in this whole presentation is how you're getting great outcomes and you're really having useful insights. And AI, as it currently stands, your students were, it was really useful in these exercises.
Yeah, and again, that's where, like, to me, the education isn't just at one level. It's not, hey, let's just teach these students how to do it. My goal is to teach other educators how to utilize it in that way, so that more students can impact it and more communities can be impacted, right? It's an education both at the micro level and the macro level, because sometimes those folks who are being affected aren't able to be at the table or part of those conversations, or even privy to those conversations that are happening, as with, with the redlining piece. It came out, and then it was enforced, and there was no room there for the community to engage, build. It was always, we have to fight back against it immediately. And I think this time there's a little bit of a difference, because instead of having to fight back against it immediately, yes, we should still be fighting against those biases that are inherent in those AIs and try to improve those models. But instead of just focus on the combativeness, we could focus on the building part simultaneously, which in my idea, like, it hasn't happened like that as much. You heard me talk about last time about GIS, drones, the internet, all these things. They are military grade equipment. They are military grade software. Like, I never let that get lost in the communities
That's
I'm
our
working
whole
with.
profession.
Exactly. Absolutely. So again, we have to take a different approach in how we're educating and organizing around that, rather than focused on, hey, this isn't going to work for us. This isn't going to work for us. Well, let's figure out how to make it work for us. That's really what I want to try to imbue upon the communities I work with.
How to format it and how to get it ingested into those foundation models promptly seems like an important part of utilizing AI in a community organizing context.
Absolutely. And I think I would just add to and like challenge a little bit, where you said definitely getting it into the hands of those decision makers, where I would say, like, well, why can't the community could have their own AI that's built around their infrastructure? And then, right. And then it becomes, well, ours says this and yours says that. So there's the right. Then you're back to square one. So it's a little bit of that dance where it's like, okay, we will build our own, but then how does it get integrated? Right. When we're integrating it with the larger system, let's not just take like the high level cookie cutter information. Let's make sure this is really filled out so that it gets in there with the city's information, et cetera. Right. Not just, oh yeah, we did a quick survey and this was, because I think there's always, there's always this guise of participation, this guise of inclusion, and it's very difficult when you don't see what's happening on behind the curtain with the AI or with the GIS. Or, hey, this is why some of the clients I've worked with, we teach them how to do Freedom of Information Acts or California Public Record requests, because you don't always know what's going on, and more of that is going to happen. And so, again, you can choose to fight against that. That is partially some energy where that needs to go there. Or you can choose to build your own and make sure that you're maintaining and relying on something that is more sound and more effective, efficient, precise to your community and what you're trying to do.
Okay, so clearly there's a lot of debate and conversation here, something really interesting to track. But yeah, Frank, you've given some really great insight, and I just love that, this report's from the field, really. And I also love the fact that you called out these students by name and you were showing their work. And I felt proud, that I'm maintaining a little platform here where, again, those students' contributions and insight are celebrated. So I think you're also doing a great job when I say waving the flag, Frank.
No, I appreciate that. And I did want to make sure that, there was another slide that had all the acknowledgments, but they, we articulated
you can put it up.
We articulated that this is a co-production, and this is something that is happening because of their insight and because of their support. And here are all of our supporters, right? Again, this is a collective, community-driven effort. Here are the partners on the right, the students on the left, and some of the supporters below. This is how it makes this is how we make it happen.
Cool.
So yeah, there, the partners on the right, the students on the left, and more of our partnerships and people below. It takes a community and a village, and this is what. Thanks for mentioning that, because they did a great job. They did a remarkable job, and now they are not only community leaders, they're tech leaders, and as we go into the next cohort, we are going to hopefully have them support and teach and train. And now we're building, educating, organizing the community, and mobilizing with the tools that we have, AI being one of those tools.
Yeah, sure. I just I love the idea of raising a cohort of AI and foundation model savvy young students and professionals who know how to pull the strings of the basis for one of these AIs and what to insert and how to ultimately influence it for their own ends. What can I say? Only because they wouldn't be the only ones trying to do that.
One of the things that I always tell folks is, if you don't believe these tools are being used against your community, then we're not even we're not even on the same page with, we're not even playing the same game. We got to understand that they have been used against communities. They have been used against people. That's just the nature of it. That's okay to acknowledge and recognize. But we need to understand how to harness this tool so we can use it, yes, to combat bias. And I think, again, in the best case scenario, put us in a favorable position, not in a lying or manipulative way, but just to be able to give us all the resources, like we've talked about. When we go to the community meeting with the mayor, we have data, numbers, and some of it was AI generated, some of it was us out in the field. How are they, for me, it's another tool in our belt that if we don't sharpen it, it'll be dull, and we're not going to be able to utilize it when we need to.
Matt, if I can, in my slightly sleep-deprived state, it's 10:30 p.m. here, but if I could have a go to sum up too, wouldn't it be great if the AI, whilst we are asleep or whilst we are off, watching sport, is advocating for us?
I appreciate you letting me showcase the work from the Bronx. It's been very important. It's been very impactful there, and we're hoping to continue that. So I appreciate you again providing us, me, the partners, and our students, the platform to be able to do that.
Great, yeah, and it's good to have these examples of AI in community organizing, Frank, and there's no one better to tell that story. So
thanks, man.